Okay, so controversial video. It's just been announced that Derrick Chauvin has been convicted of murder of George Floyd. Now, let's be perfectly honest and say what's going to happen straight away. The judge is going to basically throw the book at Derrick Chauvin because he needs to try and maintain the state's position on not having mass riots and looting and peaceful protests ongoing. So the book's going to be thrown at him. But I don't believe this was a fair trial by any stretch of the imagination. Now, you can call this controversial, you can call this whatever you want, I don't care. I'm just going to lay out what I believe is why we've ended up in a situation where a police officer has been convicted of murder based on very unreliable testimony. You're talking testimony from bystanders that basically turned into expert testimony because they were distraught at what they were seeing. Now, do I believe that Derrick Chauvin did everything right? Potentially not, no. Would manslaughter have fit better? Potentially. But there's going to be an appeal, and the reason there should be an appeal is because this trial has been prejudiced before that Derrick ever stepped foot into the courtroom. He has been guilty by the media, by the people. There hasn't been a case like this where I believe it was the defence's job to prove innocence as opposed to the prosecution's job to prove guilt. All the prosecution did during this was play on the emotions of the situation. They didn't provide factual evidence. They never said, how exactly did Derrick Chauvin kill George Floyd? Because the autopsy report shows that there was no asphyxiation. The doctor that did the autopsy did so without watching the video so he could do it without prejudice. Watching that video would have caused prejudice, which is what the other autopsy did, the one that was paid for by George Floyd's family. And he found no signs of asphyxiation, no signs of damage or bruising to the trachea or anywhere around the neck area, both externally and internally, and did not rule that Derrick Chauvin or the knee or the kneeling caused George Floyd's death in any way. But like I said, this whole case has rested on the defence proving innocence. They've had it against them from the very start. Now, you can try and claim that the jury was impartial, listen to the facts of the case and the arguments, but in the back of their mind they know, and they'd have known, that if they did not convict Derrick Chauvin, then there was going to be mass protests, and they may have become targets themselves for not making the right decision. You've had the President, Joe Biden, today come out and say he's praying that the jury make the right decision. You've had congresswomen come out and basically threaten to incite an insurrection in the state if the right decision's not made. You've had the media that have been pushing one side of a story, one side of a narrative, and Derrick Chauvin's been guilty from the minute that video was released to the general public. You've had Congress men and women basically argue counterintuitively that what's the point in a trial in these situations? Just send the police officer to jail. And you think I'm making that up? That's factual. There was a congressman that said, a congressman or woman, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm just doing this off the cuff right now. That said that we know he's guilty. Let's just send him to jail. I mean, throw away the key, lock him up, send him to jail. What he did was completely heinous, whatever. But there's going to be an instant appeal, and the appeal is going to have some strong grounds. One, this should never have taken place in the same state that the incident occurred. the jurors should never have been from the same state. They should have been moved away from Minneapolis and tried somewhere else where there was a slight chance of having an impartial jury. Because let's face it, every single one of those jurors has watched the video probably before they were selected to be on the bench for this. Most of them would have made up their mind before they even started on guilt or not guilt, and the prosecution did very well in choosing the right jurors, making sure that they had the correct balance. I don't think this trial has been fair. I don't think that there was sufficient evidence to prove beyond all reasonable doubt, and that's the criteria that seems to have gone out the window. It's beyond all reasonable doubt that Derrick Chauvin caused the death of George Floyd. Now, did he contribute to it? Was it manslaughter? Maybe there's an argument there that's more solid, but did he actually cause his death? I don't think so, and there's far too much probable evidence against that. And I revert back to the autopsy done by the doctor, the original autopsy that was done without prejudice, because it was done with no inside knowledge of how this person died, without watching a video. He just knew that the police were involved and an autopsy was required. And he didn't find the evidence that needed to be found to convict Derrick Chauvin of murder. Now, the media had convicted him, the state had convicted him, they paid $27 million out to his family already. The people of the state had convicted him by mob justice. Derrick Chauvin didn't stand a chance in this trial. And say what you will, that's just a fact. I know there's going to be a retrial, and I can't believe the judge didn't just instantly say that this was a mistrial as soon as lawmakers in America started coming out and saying that if he's not found guilty, there's basically going to be trouble. And the fact that, oh, it's okay, I trust these jurors not to have watched any TV. That's just a joke. I mean, I feel here that two people have lost their lives. One, George Floyd, tragically died during arrest due to what I believe was excited delirium. You can look it up. It's a new medical term that's starting to become more recognised. It happens as people struggle, as the people's bodies react to different situations. It could be mental health, it could be cardiovascular, it could be a drug overdose, or it could be a reaction to drugs they're taking, or it could just be due to the situation they're in. But there's a lot more information coming out about that. I believe excited delirium played a bigger part in this than Derrick Chauvin ever did. I believe that there's a lot of probable doubt into what happened, and the fact that the prosecution standards for American law in these situations is proven beyond all reasonable doubt. The fact that I can provide probable doubt is, to me, as a bystander, just with no skin in the game, enough to make me question whether this was ever a fair trial. Now, if you could get your hands on the jurors' notes, I would love to see what the questions they were asking each other were. Did the question come up? What happens if we don't convict? What happens to our community? What happens to our local homes? What happens to us? Do we become targets? Because it's not like they wouldn't have been known. People would have known who these jurors were. So, to me, there's a hell of a lot wrong with what's happened. The fact that it was conducted in the state, that the incident occurred, the fact that certain parts of the prosecution's arguments were just always emotive and less on the factual side, and the fact that I believe justice hasn't been done here. at all. You expect when you go and you analyse any court case in a civilised democracy for the facts to weigh heavily on the case. On this, even the media reporting of what's been said and done, and the prosecution and the defence and their witnesses, all the analysis was done emotively. Everything about this has been done emotively. Now, that to me screams, this isn't right. Now, where does it go from here? I don't know. I suppose what will happen now is the appeal will be put in. Whether the defence can get that moved away from the state where this happened and into a different state is going to be a key factor. And whether they can just turn around and say straight away before there's any further movement that this was just a clear mistrial based on the reaction and what individuals like President Joe Biden were saying before the jury deliberated and delivered its final verdict a few moments ago. Now, I know there's going to be loads of people that disagree with my points and my views, but hey, this is what I honestly believe. I believe we've just seen a trial by, and probably not the last, a trial by the mob as opposed to a trial by the law. A dangerous precedent where the defence has to prove innocence, and it's likely to continue in future cases. So, if you've got comments, let's hear them. But it's a sad day all round, I think. I don't think justice has been done for anyone.